All right, before we get started, we have to do the legal stuff. So here we go. This video is for entertainment and educational purposes only. Nothing in this video is financial advice, investment advice, or a recommendation to buy, sell, or hold any security including MU stock. I am not a financial advisor. Past performance is not indicative of future results. Always do your own research and consult with a licensed financial advisor before making any investment decisions. Investing involves significant risk of loss and you could lose all of your money. Phew, okay, let's get into it. Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to break down the absolutely massive surge in a company you might be sleeping on, but one that's right at the heart of the AI revolution, Micron. You know, everyone's laser focused on the companies making the AI brains, but the real story, the one we're digging into, might be about the one thing those brains literally can't live without. Okay, so let's just dive right in. We hear about the brains of AI all the time, right? These super powerful, almost magical processors. But here's the thing. They're totally, completely useless without one other critical piece of the puzzle. The part that lets them actually, well, think. Yeah, it's not just about the processor, not by a long shot. The real secret sauce, it's being able to get to truly mind-boggling amounts of data, like instantly. If you can't do that, the most powerful AI chip on Earth is basically just a really, really expensive paperweight. And this is the perfect way to think about it. If a company like NVIDIA makes the AI brain, that's the GPU, then a company like Micron makes its essential short-term memory. But we're not talking about the memory in your laptop. This is a super specialized, incredibly fast component called high bandwidth memory, or HBM. The brain literally cannot function without it. It's that simple. Now, here's where the story gets really, really interesting. What happens when the demand for that super specialized memory doesn't just, go up a little bit? What happens when it just explodes? Because that's exactly what we're seeing, a total shift in the entire market. And hey, don't just take my word for it. That's a direct quote from Micron's own head of operations. The crazy demand for AI is creating this massive memory crunch. It's soaking up every last bit of supply in the industry, and then it's looking for more. This is not some small hiccup. It's a full-on, system-wide bottleneck. I mean, just to put this into perspective for you, the demand is so intense that Micron's entire supply of this HBM stuff is completely sold out, not just for this year, but all the way through 2026. Think about that. 2 years from now, and it's already gone. And it's the same story for their rivals, too. It's just unbelievable. So what's the bottom line here? When supply is this tight, the companies making the memory get incredible pricing power. I mean, when your customers are so desperate, they have to lock in their orders years in advance, you can pretty much charge whatever you want. And it's not just about AI. This is causing serious ripple effects, creating shortages for regular PCs and smartphones too. Okay, so you might be thinking, well, if demand is that high, other companies will just jump in and start making it, right? Not so fast. See, this isn't a market where you have dozens of companies fighting over the scraps. It's the exact opposite. The market for this super critical HBM is what you'd call a classic oligopoly. It's a fancy-sounding word, but all it really means is that a very, very small number of companies can actually produce this stuff. In fact, check this out. There are only 3 companies in the entire world that can make high-bandwidth memory at the scale the AI boom needs. Just 3. So you've got this insane, exploding demand and only 3 places to get it from. That is the definition of a perfect storm. So, sky-high demand, almost no suppliers. What does that do to the financials? Well, as you can probably guess, it's led to some absolutely staggering results and some even crazier predictions for the future. The numbers are just wild. Micron stock has been on a tear, driven by what you can only call hypergrowth. We're talking revenue growth that's speeding up into triple digits. And earnings, well, earnings are forecast to grow by over 400%. You just don't see numbers like this from a huge established company. It's pure startup territory. Now, just to give you a sense of the scale of this whole thing, one source did some back-of-the-napkin math based on the company's own forecasts. And look, this is just one take. It's a bit speculative, but it's really fascinating to see what could be possible. So here's step 1. They looked at the company's projected earnings per share for just a single quarter out in 2026. And that number is $8.10. Okay, step 2. They apply a price-to-earnings multiple of 30. Now, if you're not a finance geek, that's just a way of figuring out what a company's stock should be worth based on its profits. And a 30 multiple is actually pretty reasonable for a hot tech company, way less than a giant like NVIDIA. And when you do that simple math, you annualize the earnings and multiply by 30, you get a number that just, well, it makes your jaw hit the floor. It really shows you the kind of massive potential that some people are seeing down the road. And this chart right here is the heart of the whole argument. This is the big disconnect. Even with all this insane growth baked in, Micron is trading at a forward PE of around 9. That's dirt cheap compared to the average tech stock. And it's not even in the same universe as an AI darling like NVIDIA. But look, anytime you see projections that high and a valuation that seems that low, you have to ask yourself, what's the catch, right? There's always a catch. What are the big risks? Well, the biggest fear, the thing that always comes up when you talk about this industry, is its own long and sometimes pretty painful history. See, the memory market has always been what's called cyclical. It has these massive booms where everyone's making a ton of money, and then it's followed by these brutal busts. So the skeptics, the bears, they say this is just another boom before the next bust. But the believers, the bulls, they're arguing that this time is different, that the AI boom isn't a cycle, it's a permanent structural change in how the world works. So where does Micron stand? Well, they are betting big. We're talking about putting their money where their mouth is. They just broke ground on a new facility in New York that could eventually cost up to $100 billion. That's billion with a B. They are clearly planning for a future where this demand just keeps on going up. So let's just boil this all down. The core takeaway here is that memory has changed. It's not just a boring, simple component anymore. It's now a critical, strategic bottleneck for the entire global build-out of AI. It's moved from being a side character to being one of the main stars of the show. And that really leaves us with one final big question. As AI keeps getting bigger and bigger, while everyone is watching the brains, is the real power, the real leverage, actually in the one part that gives them a memory? That's the thing to think about.